Hello, my YouTube friends, and happy Saturday. So, today I'm going to talk about evictions. I am going to do my usual and talk about some stocks as well, but I asked my wife this morning what I should talk about. I'm guessing since we are evicting somebody currently, she said you should talk about eviction. So, I'm going to talk to you guys about the process a little bit and really get into how it happens because just like having an employee and letting them go, there's a saying if you run a company that you don't fire an employee, they fire themselves. I would say the same with the tenant. Unfortunately, they really get themselves evicted. I for sure don't want to evict a tenant. I mean, if you think it through pretty logically, who would ever, as a landlord, want to evict a tenant? What you hope for is a good relationship. They pay their rent, they take care of the house, and you move on after they're done using it. And hopefully, even maybe they stay a long time. I mean, we have two places. In our other place, the tenant has been there going on like 6 or 7 years, and we haven't raised the rent on them since like 2020 or 21 because they're such good tenants and they take care of the property that we're giving them a great deal in order to stay in that home because we love them as tenants. Like that is the relationship I would like to have with anybody renting from me. Evicting somebody is just terrible. Who wants to go through the process? So while I'm sure that the tenant is saying how awful a landlord and whatever they're saying about we didn't do and they're just kicking me out for no reason, I will tell you there is reason and we'll get into that. Well, good morning. My name is Adam Kahn, and this is Investing with Adam K. I hope you guys had a great week. I hope your portfolios are hitting all-time highs. I hope your lives are good, your families are healthy, and everything else. I really hope for all of that with everyone. So before we get into the evictions, if you guys could do me a favor, if you haven't already, and hit that subscribe button, even if you could take a second and hit the like button and make some comments. I know you've heard it before in other people's videos. The reality is that really helps YouTube's algorithm and it helps the channel. At this point, I've been really happy to see it grow, even though I really do the channel for me because it helps me with my investments to be more disciplined, but I'm really glad to see people enjoying the content. So if you guys could do your part, it only takes a second. I really appreciate the help. So, why are we evicting somebody? The reality is, she sort of took care of the home, other than certain aspects that she agreed to do or he agreed to, that they weren't taking care of. So one of the agreements early on is they had negotiated the rent down a couple $100s a month that they were going to get a landscaper and never did. I only say that as kind of an afterthought because that has nothing to do with the eviction. The eviction is they stopped paying about 3 months ago. My understanding from them is they have some $72 million deal in Dubai that they're getting a nice percentage of, and they're expecting a $3 million pay when that comes due. Now, in the meantime, I've just been waiting. The first month that they didn't make their payment, they said, well, could you do me a favor and let us use our security deposit to go towards the rent, which you're really not supposed to do. But like I said, nobody wants to evict somebody. I try to have good relationships, so I said no problem, even though this is super uncomfortable because if somebody damages the property, that's really what that security deposit is there for. And I've been through that, so it's a frustrating situation. But either way, against my better judgment, no problem. The next month, I got to hear about how that it would be coming because the deal is coming anytime soon. About 2 or 3 weeks into it, I said, "Look, I'm real sorry, but unfortunately, I can't just go on forever just not getting paid. So I'm going to have to start the process because here in Las Vegas, it takes a little bit of time, but it's not a difficult process." And I'm like, "Look, don't take it any wrong way. If you make the payments and get caught up, I have no problem getting rid of it. Even the way that the system works, the first initiation of the eviction is a 7-day pay or quit. And if they make the payments within 7 business days, which really gives them close to 2 weeks, depending on when it's submitted, well, it undoes everything. It's not an eviction. They get caught up and they move on. So as long as that money's coming in, you're able to make the rent payment, there's no issue. So I try to stay in communication. I don't do anything under anyone's back or behind their back or anything to catch them off guard. I really want to keep them updated on it. When the 7-day pay or quit thing finished, she had written in, or he had written in the memo that essentially I need more time, so please can I have more time before we go forward? Well, the way it works here in Las Vegas is if anybody communicates anything that they think there's reason they shouldn't be getting evicted, it then goes to court. They set a court date, which for us was maybe 3 or 4 weeks later. So for my end, we're all losing time. And at that court date, for the most part, if somebody hasn't been paying, the judge is probably going to grant the eviction. At that stage, depending on the judge, either it's going to be immediate, which doesn't mean the person gets kicked out immediately, and I'll explain, or they'll give them a little bit of a stay in order to get things in order and try to get moved out and whatever else. If they don't, which is why it's not immediate, and this is for both cases, generally, even if they want them out immediately, they have about 24 to 48 hours, which is reasonable if you hire movers and get packed up and move. But they granted an additional 7 days. It's 7 business days again, so it's another approximately 10 days. Where if they still haven't moved out, you then hire the constable. One of the issues is the constable does not work, so they don't operate on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So they're really only available to do lockouts on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And there's a large backlog of people who are getting evicted, so it takes a little time for them to get out there. The way that my eviction was working, the day that it was laid, should have been on Friday. Well, since you can't hire the constable because they still haven't moved out, because my understanding is the movers canceled. And then they're supposed to reschedule for Sunday, but I've already been prepped because he's very confused because they're closed on Sunday, even though that's when they rescheduled. Also mentioned something about popping out a door or a window in the house in order to be able to move something, which, as somebody who hasn't made a payment in 3 or 4 months, it's very uncomfortable to think of the thought. So I did not give them permission to just knock out a window or a door in order to move their pieces. My concern is that's going to get ignored, and I'm going to come into something broken that I'm going to have to repair, on top of the fact that all the grass was taken out of the backyard. So now I have a big mound of dirt that I'm going to have to attend to when they move out as well. I have no idea why. Makes no sense to me, but these are the things that landlords deal with. And part of what I talk about when I get older, as much as my heart and love is for real estate, if the advantage as I'm getting older is not being leveraged, it makes me want to gravitate more and more towards dividend stocks, because if I could get out of the home, I don't have these problems. I joke about Pfizer's never going to give me a call up and let me know that their warehouse has been damaged and it's dirty and they need me to come clean it up. And quite honestly, if they ever did, I'd be pretty flattered that for whatever reason they thought of me, because I don't work for them. Now, if the person hasn't moved by the stage when you finally get the constable to come out, the constable literally changes the locks on them and locks them out. As a landlord, still, unfortunately, if they've left some items behind, it is your responsibility to keep these items for 30 days. Even if they're large items, if there's a sofa or a bed or anything else, the landlord has to retain them and make sure that they're safe. They also have to give the ex-tenant, at that point, ex-tenant, enough, no, like they have to give them access so that they can retrieve those items. Now, they don't have to go out of the way, they don't have to be nuts about it, but they do have to make themselves available and be reasonable, because you're not trying to keep their items. If after the haven't if after the 30 days they haven't gotten those items back, of course you can get rid of them at that point. But who wants to really go through this? Who really wants to pay money for each step along the way, because you have to pay the lawyer to submit the eviction. If it doesn't get rectified in that 7 days, you then have to follow up, and either they've moved out or they've made their payment and everything is good. Or if they haven't, you then have to schedule the court date, which costs money. If you have the lawyer who goes there for you, you have to pay them to represent you. And if they still don't do that, you have to pay a fee in order to submit the information for the constable, as well as pay the constable to go out. When the constable goes, they put the locks on the door and the house is back to yours, and you can start doing what you need to get it rented out again. But again, if something's left behind, who wants to keep it another 30 days and continue to perpetuate the headache along and deal with a house that you're having trouble renting out? Because for me, it's going to be over 3 months of getting no rent, losing the security deposit because I was nice, and then the time to get it re rented. I would so much rather have a good relationship with the tenant, give them a great deal on the property so that they're happy to get what they're getting, and them take care of the house and move on. In my mind, like, tenants evict themselves. It's just like employees who fire themselves. They don't show up to work or whatever it is. Nobody wants to fire an employee. They hope to have a good relationship, pay somebody for the job they've done, receive payment for the rent of the property, and be able to have a happy life on all sides. Tell me in the comments, what do you guys think? Do you think that tenants evict themselves? Do you think employees fire themselves? Or do you think that the landlord and the bosses evict tenants and they fire their employees? You know, I'm on one side of it, of course, so I have my opinion, but I'd be curious if somebody disagrees, why they think I'm wrong. Like, I'm happy to have that discussion. It's kind of interesting to me to get other people's perspective. And then in markets in general, I think all roads seem to lead to inflation. Now, I'm quoting somebody else. I forgot who it was. I don't think it was Stanley Drunken-Miller, but I think somebody said he had the same, thought process. No matter who gets elected, I don't think it really matters. They're planning on spending more money. I'm not sure I really see an avenue that may not lead to continued inflation. I don't know that I have a ton of concern about that because if there's more inflation, then the markets are going to do well. Where my concern lies is the separation of the haves and the have-nots. Now, even when I listen to the All In podcast, which sometimes I like, sometimes I don't, but they had some really good points. Of the things that I have concerns of, where my brain starts going crazy as to how AI is going to change the world. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Things tend to take longer than what people think. But what they were talking about, and it's kind of what I've been worried about, is in the next 4 to 10 years, there's going to be a huge transformation of white collar jobs as well. And when you see people start losing their jobs and the unemployment potentially get worse, when it pushes into the white collar segment, and all of a sudden you see people who haven't saved having all sorts of problems and causing issues with the separation of the haves and have nots. Because in this scenario, the companies are going to be doing great because they're replacing these white collar jobs with AI. So they're saving tons of money. They're becoming more efficient. They're even pushing down to the blue collar jobs as well with automation. And people are going to be displaced. And either there has to be some new avenue of jobs created, or there could be big problems with what do people do for work and no real solutions. So while you watch the stock market and assets go up in value, and people start being unemployed with no way of paying for these higher priced assets, what's the long term outcome? And do you start to see a bit of a revolt or a bit of a murmurs in citizens who just don't have a way to survive? Where it stems from is if you look at the earnings of Meta and Amazon and Google and some of the others versus their employee count, they keep managing to increase revenues, grow the business, continue to grow profits while keeping employment around the same level without having to hire new people, which is what they had to do in the past. The thought process is that's the beginning of automation and AI usage and things to help mitigate how many employees they need and becoming more efficient, allowing the growth rates to continue to grow. Well, if we don't have companies hiring, again, where are people going to work? It's going to be a tough situation. I think this is a ways out. And in the meantime, it's kind of why I talk about a potential melt up. I would be more cautious of seeing the stock market shoot up. And the interesting thing is, we're watching stocks shoot up, we're watching metals like gold and silver, we're watching Bitcoin go higher, as well as the dollar gain strength. It's very rare that you see all of these things happen at the same time. They're usually happening a little differently because as one thing gets stronger, something else is getting weaker. I think this is what's going, and part of it's because of the Trump trade, from what I can tell. But I don't think that changes if Harris gets in. I think either way, we see the spending and we see inflation. And don't forget, even these strikes are inflationary. If dock workers are getting a raise over the next, I think it's 6 years, what do you think that's going to do to all the prices of imported goods? And then if there are tariffs added on top of it, it's not like the companies are just going to eat these additional costs. They'll probably get passed through to the people, the end user. Same with the strike at Boeing. If they end up, which they already did. Now, here's the crazy thing. The employees were asking for a 40% pay increase over 4 years. Boeing agreed to 35%, and they've decided to stay on strike and vote it down over the 5% difference. To me, I think that's absolutely nuts. Why would you not want to get back to work? I understand that the CEO got a big pay package to be let go. I can understand being upset about that. But demanding an extra 5% and putting your foot down and having issues and not going back to work, you understand that that just causes inflation as well. Do you think Boeing is just going to eat the additional cost just like anybody else and just lose money and move on? Or do you think they'll find ways to push ahead and work through it and make some of that money back? Either they're going to end up letting people go and automating and deciding they don't need whole divisions so it doesn't impact the union because we're not just firing union workers, we no longer need this part of the company. Or they'll figure out ways that they'll just charge more for the planes. And if that happens, what they'll end up doing, charge more for the planes, so the airline pays more for the planes, and then they'll end up raising ticket prices to offset the cost of the planes that they need to fly us around. One way or another, it comes back on us either way. And I'm not saying you shouldn't get paid fairly. I really don't want that heard the wrong way. I just think quibbling over the extra 5% is probably silly, and be happy that you got 35% pay increase as well as whatever else on the table that you were asking for. Now, I'm a little bit selfish. I have some of the Boeing stock. I'd like to see this strike settled because I have a theory that once that's settled, all the bad news will start drifting behind, and over the next 2, 3 years, you'll see the stock really perform well. Maybe I'm wrong. I know there's some of you out there who hate Boeing stock, and quite honestly, that makes me like it more. I feel similar about how like Chipotle was maybe 8 or 10 years ago when they were having all sorts of scares. Like when companies are in the negative, and look at CrowdStrike so recently. I know it's all different, but when everybody's negative on a company, typically that's when it's on sale. And the more negative it is, the more the sale is. Now, it's possible that the news is right and the company goes out of business and it's just awful. And I don't want to discount that because that is a reality and the risk you take. But if not, you're getting these companies on sale, and it's very rare that they go on sale. It's hard to get a company that's had such negative news on it. And if you guys want to know what I've been doing with the Boeing that I have some that's in a set it and forget it account that when it started falling, I started to pick up. But I do have some in the trading account as well, and I sell calls anytime it rallies. So when they thought they had the agreement and the stock rallied back up, it actually got, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think around $162 a share, possibly a little bit higher. I even sold the 160 call when it was above 160. Whenever they get these rallies in the trading account, I sell calls against it. I sold a 160, a 170. I was even able to sell a 180 call and get some money for it because earnings were coming out and the stock was people were getting overexcited in my mind. So I'm able to collect some of the premium back and continue to improve my purchase price or consider it profits or however one would look at it anytime that the stock has bounces up, which anytime all the way down it's been having nice bounces, so it's been pretty cool to see. And I still think whenever they get past this strike, that as long as they don't have another plane crash, as long as doors don't fly open, they have a new CEO in place, they have a lot of purchase orders that have come in. They're talking about selling off their space program, so they're going to raise some revenue on the losses that they've had and get back in line in order to grow business and continue down the path that they should be going. And once they do, I really see Boeing as a great long term hold. I think they have a good moat. It's them and Airbus, and that's about it. And I don't know who else is going to come into that space and start competing. And the Fed can't win. I kind of feel badly for these guys. When they didn't cut the rates a couple of months ago, everybody had a fit. They then cut a half point to try to get ahead and probably make up for the month that they skipped and people saying they were behind. Now everybody's questioning whether they should have even cut because some of the data that's come in is showing that inflation is still holding up and they're blaming a half point cut a month ago saying maybe this was not a great idea. So how do they possibly win? I think it's awful. And I still think that they should have just gone a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, and keep dipping their toe in and just seeing how the market responds. I'm curious to see what they do at the next meeting. Are they going to skip a cut and say that the data has been coming in showing it's a little bit hotter than we expected? I don't think so. I think they still go with a quarter. I'm hoping they don't do a half and just push the markets even further. And then I'll question some motives if they do. But I think that the unemployment is something to be concerned about because generally before a recession, that comes along later in the game, and it is picking its head up. I'd like to see them stay ahead of the unemployment, even if that jeopardizes and potentially causes some more inflation. As long as it doesn't push back into the fours and start getting ahead of it, ahead of things, I think it's okay to have inflation in the high twos to even the mid threes. I think it's natural for a country to be growing at that pace. The concern is we've had so much overspending, and not just from the US, but from Paris and the UK and China and pretty much everyone in Europe, that they're all running into the same issue of they've spent too much money and they're running in debt and they're having inflationary problems because it's stimulating their economies. I'm not sure if in the end that they're going to have their central banks have to buy back some of this stuff and just kind of put it on the books and make their currencies all worth less money, which could be the reason why the dollar's strengthening, because it's just strengthening in relation to what's going on in the other countries that are all in the same boat. But I kind of wonder if some of these, places that we think of as a little bit behind that haven't made so much debt, if they'll end up in a good position, then their currencies will start getting stronger, which will make it difficult for the locals in terms of being able to buy things there. But it's hard to see what'll come next. It's really interesting. But either way, it seems like the Fed loses and everybody complains. I'm guessing we'll cut a quarter. Got to stay ahead of the unemployment and hope that it doesn't get out of control, and see that people keep spending, which is kind of what I'm saying about Christmas. Are any of you not going out and buying what you typically would for Christmas? Are you cutting back? Are you not having Christmas dinner? Are you not visiting friends? Please tell me in the comments, because I'm really curious about it. I think that you're going to see the Targets of the world. And you guys know I kind of like Target as an investment, but all of the retail. Are they going to have a tough Christmas, or are people going to find the money and still go out and still spend like they always do and see these companies have decent earnings? And my guess is they're going to have good earnings, which is why I like UPS and Target and some of those others that are wrapped around those holiday things. UPS actually finally had decent earnings. It's the first time in 2 years they saw increased revenues. Super excited to see it. The stock reacted favorably. Um, Kind of missed opportunity to maybe buy a little bit more where I was hoping to, but if you're in, good for you. I still think it's a great company. But as always, you need to make your own financial decisions. You need to do your own research. Please don't use any of the content I'm providing as financial advice. It is just for entertainment purposes only. And you guys need to reach out to your financial planners or do your own research or whatever it is that you do when doing your finances and making your financial decisions. And last but definitely not least, today was another wonderful Miracle Day or Miracle League Saturday. I'm sure I'll post the chicken dance like I tried to do the past few weeks. We're coming towards the end of the season, so I'll be super bummed when it was over. Today we all got dressed up for Halloween. My son is Anane or some boy, I'm terrible. But it's a character from one of the anime cartoons that he watches. My wife got one of those things that has a fan in it and it blows up like a dinosaur and looks like the little, feet are out there like that. I was Batman, so it was super fun this morning to go out and play the I don't. It's not softball. It's not baseball. It's not wiffle ball. They have these little foam balls, but it plays kind of like baseball. But we were super excited to go out and play foam ball baseball with the kids and had a really nice time for Halloween. Again, I know I mentioned it earlier. If you could do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, make some comments. Let me know how your week was. And again, I hope your portfolios did great. I hope everybody's continuing to put away and save for their future, their kids' future, their retirement. What's your goal? What are you hoping your account will do for you? And what's your timeline? Like, I really hope the best for everybody. No gloom and doom on these videos. I don't want to scare people because, like I always say, even if the gloom and doomers are right, I would rather see people putting away for their future and saving and working their way through the rough recessions or whatever down markets and buying things less expensive and more expensive than trying to time it and hope to catch it when the market corrects and you just happen to be perfect and buy the lows. Like I think that's very hard to do, and I'd rather people just put away and put away and put away. Lots of love. Have a great week. I'm going to try to do a live maybe tomorrow. Maybe I'll schedule one depending on what it looks like for my day. I really like the live. I don't know how, if anybody knows how to market it where people see it. I do schedule them on my page, but maybe I have to come up with one day a week or something because I love the platform. I think it's super fun. I like the back and forth. It gives me stuff to talk about when you guys have questions. I'll have to get more organized at it, maybe get a laptop out here so I can pull up some of the things and look at the charts and see what the ratios are and read a little bit about each company so that I can answer the questions a little bit more intelligently than that's not one I follow or whatever it is. Those of you who have made the lives, it's super cool. What I'm really hoping is over time they grow and there's this memory of, oh my God, I got to hang out and chat with him when there were only like 6 or 8 of us on there. Anyway, again, have a great week and I'm sure I'll talk to you guys soon.